more important. I have to say that the issue of skills, education and training is more and more on top of the European agenda. Obviously, in Europe, it's really a competence of each country. It's not the role of the European Union to define a curricula and so on. But we see also the importance of the skills and the skilled people for growth, for jobs, for innovation, for creativity. And all those issues are more and more, as you know, particularly in this period of crisis, and fortunately perhaps for the post-crisis period, very important for the European Union, for each member state, for each individual, obviously, but for the European Union also. So that's the reason why skills, qualifications are becoming a kind of key success factor at the European level for the future. And the situation is not so good. If I take only youth unemployment in Europe, you know already very well the situation, which is really difficult in some countries and in average at the EU level. And we know from some forecasts that by 2025 we will need more of highly skilled people, more of medium skilled people, and less of low skilled citizens. And if I take simply the results of the last PIAC survey from OECD, PIAC is a kind of PISA for adults. PIAC, we see immediately the challenge for Europe. In average, only 80% of adults are equipped with really good basic skills. So that means that 20% of adult people are not equipped with basic literacy and numeracy skills. If I compare to South Korea, we see a big difference. Also for new skills, ICT skills, which are so important for enterprises, so important for the society, we have still a big lack of ICT skills, and also a lot of disparity between countries. I don't want to mention the best, but the fact that in Europe we have so big disparities between countries, it's not good. It's not good for the European Union, it's not good for the member states. It's not good for employment in Europe. So that's the reason why we have really to put more and more skills and qualifications on this political agenda. And we try to do that not only for formal education, not only for universities, traditional universities. We have also quite a lot of traditional universities in Europe compared to South Korea. But also skills and qualifications which are acquired in non-formal or informal setting, which is the purpose of this biennale. It's quite challenging to discuss at the European level about non-formal and informal education and learning, because it's very complex. If you imagine that it's already difficult to have an automatic recognition of diplomas at the European level, when we discuss about non-formal and informal settings, it's about skills and qualifications acquired at the workplace. It's about continuous vocational training. It's about adult learning. It's about lifelong learning. It's about training which are provided by chambers of commerce, by local authorities. It's also about volunteering for young people and volunteering for all citizens. So it's by essence a quite large spectrum of activities outside the very formal setting of schools, universities, and vocational training institutions. But even more, even more, even more. Can I have some help? Which one? Thank you. So I missed my exam to validate my skills by ICT, but I received a guidance just before, a bit different, so quite interesting in practice. So we have new challenges, not only in the quite welcome, well-known area of non-formal and informal setting, but we have also the new challenges about new phenomena like open educational resources. We have quite a lot of new developments starting in the States, but now also in Europe, about, for example, MOOCs, massive open online courses. And we have also to integrate, just to give an example on this slide, you will see that in 12 months, only 12 months, the number of MOOCs increased from 400 to more to 2,000. And it is also the same in Europe. I would say 2 years ago, this map would be simply empty. So now it's more than 450 MOOCs which have been developed in the European Union. You see the differences between countries. But it's an interesting phenomenon, and it is something we want also to integrate in our non-formal and informal validation with new challenges. With new challenges. What about quality? What about quality assurance, like for other areas of non-formal, informal learning? Assessment, recognition, validation. Do we have to accept the pages? And another challenge also is that it's more a cross-border issue. Up to now, we discuss largely at the national level, but we see also now an international setting of education and training. Who will validate that? How to validate that in an international area? So we have to take on board this kind of well-known challenges and this kind of very new challenges in our policy. And this policy for validation of non-formal and informal learning at the European level, it's not only linked to education, as already mentioned by Professor Kim, it's also a lot with employment policy. And it's important to notice that at the European level, we have a strong message now, and we have passed this message for almost 5 years now, I would say just at the beginning of the crisis in practice, to say that the education is certainly very important for personal development. It's absolutely important for citizenship development, but the priority for the time being is to provide the skills which are useful, particularly for young people, to get a job. So the link with the employment policy, one example is the youth guarantee, which is just being implemented at the European level by each country to give a kind of guarantee for young people to get either a job or a training or a traineeship or an entrepreneurial opportunity, something like that, in a few months after they will leave education. That's the kind of practical tools we try to implement at the European level. But something also to deal with guidance. Yes, you want to say something?
Yeah, well, to me, we tend to start on the problem side, unemployment, quality problems in education, but why don't we start in where we learn things, which is on the workplace or in life? to me, it seems that we in Holland, but also probably in Europe, we do things, we start things and we say it's important after we see there's a problem in some area, instead of thinking ahead and saying, well, we start where we are basically at our best, namely at the workplace where we learn most things. Don't you agree?
Yes, I agree. I don't see for the time being any contradiction. Maybe I can continue, but no, I don't see any problem with your comment. Employment policy guidance is it's also very important, and that we have proposed, for example, to have a kind of audit skills to be implemented by each country. And Remo Vuren will let you with more comments about the European Lifelong Guidance Policy Network during this conference. The link with qualification frameworks, it was already mentioned several times. There is the importance of national qualification frameworks and the link with the European qualification framework. And obviously, as already mentioned, the quality assurance. So we see this policy for recognizing and validating non-formal and informal learning really in the middle of a lot of European concerns and European policies. What we have done at the European level is a quite important, from my point of view, political step through a recommendation of the European Council 2 years ago, inviting the 28 countries for a kind of a commitment for putting in place arrangements for validating non-formal and informal learning. A recommendation in the European jargon is not a directive, so it's not legally binding. It's not something which is mandatory, but it's quite important because it's a political commitment. And if you have 28 countries which are committed to implement really in each country arrangements for validating, we hope it will be really a step further. The key challenge will be really to put those arrangements, because it's easy to say that validation of prior learning is very important, non-formal and so on, but that's political statement. But to put in place really arrangements, infrastructure, organism, institute, to validate in the 28 countries is really the key challenge of this recommendation. And also there is a deadline by 2018. So it's not so long. It's not so long. I was impressed by the history in Korea. So it's quite a short challenge. And it's not the same situation in all countries. In some countries, you will see later on, we have already good situations. In other countries, they are ready to start almost from scratch. With a strong involvement or request of involvement of stakeholders, Chamber of Commerce, business, trade unions, providers of education and training systems, government. So it's also a question to put in place that all together, with 4 stages also, because another complexity of validation is the different level. You can have a kind of identification of skills, documentation, assessment, certification. So you have different degrees also in which you can work for developing your system in each country. We want to support that at the, my God.
One on top.
We want to support that at the European level with two main tools we are developing and which will be ready by the end of this year. A European set of guidelines for validating non-formal and informal learning in the different settings, in the different circumstances, taking into account the situation of well-known non-formal learning, but also taking into account new challenges like MOOCs or open educational resources. And we want also to develop by the end of this year a European inventory on the validation of non-formal and informal learning. It's not to develop because it's already something which is in place, but we want to do a new round of inventory of validation practices in our member states. And I think the two tools, guidelines and the inventory, will be very useful for countries which are committed to put in place new systems for helping them in the implementation of those systems. The situation in Europe is as follows. If you look at the green or the dark green countries, you have the countries where the systems for validation of prior learnings are the most advanced, I would say. So you see, it's not only north-south issue, as quite often in education analysis. Obviously, we have Finland and Norway and the Netherlands, which are very well advanced, but also France, with also in France a long tradition of validation of les acquis de l'expérience, so validation of prior learnings, but also Portugal. Portugal is very well advanced also in having put in place their arrangements in the past. And we see also a number of progress in